As I topped the hill there at Lane Funeral Home, I could see this tremendous glow in the sky. And being a volunteer fireman at Rossville at that time, I knew that something big had to be going, you know, and it was pretty obvious it's in the city limits, the way the glow looked from where I was, from my point of view as I come down Chickamauga Avenue.
When the alarm came in, it was at night, and it was very alarming to us simply because of the magnitude of the fire itself. And of course, we were a small department, knowing that we couldn't handle anything like this by ourselves, so the news got spread very rapidly, and we had help from all over. Chattanooga was very nice to us. Commissioner Bookie Turner was Commissioner of Fire and Police at that time, and he was a tremendous help. There was departments all over the area that helped, that came to us at that time.
We didn't have Tri-State Mutual Aid back then, and fire departments from around the area, as far away as Alabama as I recall, would come in and set up. And another thing, as you followed a few years back and had this bad wreck down on I-75, and Sheriff Summers was talking about it, there was most fire departments didn't even have radios. So most of it, you had to walk from one truck to the other to convey a message or what you needed people to do or whatever. And even the city of Chattanooga came out, which was unusual for them to leave the city limits. Commissioner Turner, a fellow named Bookie Turner, was a fire and police commissioner at that time, and he brought equipment over, including ladder trucks. Rossville didn't have a ladder at that time. I don't think Fort Oglethorpe had a ladder at that time.
I worked second shift, so I went home and turned on my stereo. Wife cooked me a big supper, and they said the meal's on for it. I said, I don't believe that, because they just left there. And I looked and I seen all that smoke, so I ran over there and told Bill Cooper, my neighbor, about it, and he went down and got a bunch of stuff out of there, and then I went and told, Pete Moore then I went down and seen Pete and told him. And then we went down there and started getting stuff out of there, and they said, oh, don't get nothing out of this apartment over here, won't get this far, but it did. And the only thing kept burning the whole thing up with that firewall between boards, you know, about 2 foot firewall in between there.
At that time, I lived 2 blocks from the front gate, and when it got started, we could really see it from, we lived up a little hill up here. I lived up on Beach Street, and the fire just kept growing, and more fire companies or whatever came. Chattanooga was a big help in the fire. Lafayette came, Chickamauga came. It was just devastation. I mean, you could hear the concrete floors falling in. Several of the buildings had concrete floors, first and second floor and stuff.
And you could hear them big twisters falling through up second floor, coming down, hitting. You could hear them like an explosion when they come down, making a lot of noise.
And I remember it was late at night, 11 o'clock or so. It might have been a little later than that. My mother waking me up and telling me that, my dad's, where he worked at, was on fire. The week after that, all I can remember is fire hoses everywhere. We lived up on Beach Street, and there was fire hoses all over the road. We couldn't hardly go anywhere. We did. We had a hard time getting home. And I remember, after all of that and everything, the fire was out and all, I remember passing up and down McFarland Avenue, and the windows on the building were blackened, and you could see through them. And, it was just a terrible, terrible tragedy.
We fought it for hours and hours. And of course, we were involved in it in days and days of investigating and debris and all this. And actually years, some of getting rid of some of the debris.
The fire burned on into Sunday morning. It started Saturday afternoon. And the bad part about that fire, the cause, I think, was determined, as I recall, a fork truck operator had pushed a bale of material into dry transformers on the wall there. And the shell of the transformer went into the winding on the transformer, which heated up with that material up next to it. And that weekend, I don't think there was anyone working at the mill. They'd shut down on Friday and wasn't going to start back up till Monday. And, excuse me, what happened, there's no telling how long that fire was in its incipient stages. It was laying there slowly building up and building up temperature. And of course, when it let go, a lot of the plant had wooden floors. And over the years, where they had oiled those machines and stuff, those floors were pretty well saturated with oil. And it's not a lot of ways you can get that out of there. So that contributed to the fire.
It was just devastation. I don't know how to explain it. It was something you didn't want to see, but it's something you'll never forget. And a lot of people that lived in the neighborhood went to help the firefighters do whatever they could help. You know, wasn't much you could do.
It was involved, we call it the back portion of the plant where it was across the street from the high school. And it caught there, and of course, when it caught fire, it come all the way to the east part, to McFarland Avenue end of it, and burned all the way through. Now, the office part of the mill, the boiler room, it wasn't damaged. Could have had some smoke damage, but structurally damaged it wasn't. And there was a portion on the east, best I remember now, that stood the test, but it did collapse in the center. And we've taken some pictures of those, and I've viewed some of them recently when I was going through my files in my office and had put them all together. And I just sat back, I guess less than 30 days, or maybe 60 days ago, less than 60 days ago, to sit back and reminisce about what we really went through to do that. I was functioning that night just as a regular fireman, just like everybody else, and we was fortunate to have all the help we got that night.
Pretty much the center of the complex was destroyed. As far as square footage, you had multiple floors in there at that time. And of course, when they built back, they put a single story structure inside there. And you would have to have some plans and an architect scale to sit down and figure out how much of it was actually destroyed. It was a big fire. It was a big fire. It was a multi-story structure, and you can see the intensity of the heat. You're talking temperatures way on up there to twist steel and make steel do what that's doing. As a matter of fact, this next picture, if you could see more in that direction, you would see where that wall fell out and fell into the complex and stood back. Of course, here again, you can see where they're moving stuff out of there. Now then, here's a photograph. You can still see the fire hose in here. This is inside the board complex there, the knitting mill, and you can see where it's going back. And where the wall, you can see the daylight back in there. This next photograph here is probably 2 or 3 days into the fire. And what happened, these people are in the board complex on the second floor squirting water, and you still see smoke. If you see back over in the other area, you still see smoke coming out there. The amazing thing about that fire, it would have been the worst fire loss in the country until the Chicago Merchandise Mart come in that year. There were 2 other fires, and that fire still placed 3rd in the country as one of the biggest losses to occur that year. So the fire was, it was a big fire. The amazing thing, as long as we fought that fire, other than a few blisters where people had ill-fitting boots on their feet, no one got injured in putting that fire out, which is really amazing. Another thing, back in those days, breathing apparatus in volunteer fire departments were not that common. Rossville had 2 pumpers. They had 2 750 pumpers, a 19, I think it was a 37 or a 38 GMC, and a 57 GMC, which the capacity of the trucks were 750 gallons a minute at the draft. Now, when you lay out 11 or 1200 feet to get in the mill, with a 2.5-inch line, you're limited to about 250 to 300 gallons a minute, depending on the residual flow on the plug you're hooked to. And at that time, in the years past, the city had relied on the mill hydrants to contain fires in there, and they got away with it for years. And the unfortunate part was, as the fire progressed, the sprinkler system, the pipes began to break in there, and the water pressure on the sprinkler system or the yard hydrants went down, and people had to regroup. They had to pick up hose and back to a city hydrant and lay back in. And in Rossville's case, I think the hydrant that we had to lay to was at the corner of West Gordon and William Street, which was 2 blocks really from, or nearly 2.5, maybe 3 blocks from where we really needed to be. And of course, you know, it emptied both hose beds on the trucks. So you basically had a truck sitting there that they couldn't do anything.
At that time, I don't think we had but 2, and they were old fire trucks, but I would venture to say we had 30 or more fire trucks itself. Now, you know, they would drive some there that wasn't active. The truck wasn't, but the personnel that came with them were very active. And of course, they was drawing water from the different areas of the city. And of course, we had to lay the lines from different hydrants and all this. Of course, the water company had to get involved, and we were drawing it out of the lake there at the pond and all this. So it was a real large structure on fire, and we all came together and did the best we could at that time.
After the fire was brought under control, what happened? These folks manning these lines were probably employees of one of the companies around through there. And in order to actually get the thing fully extinguished, the insurance people and the mill had to bring in these huge tandem dump trucks. And I'd say probably for 5, 6, maybe 7, 8 days after that, as they dug through that, it would flame back up, and the debris that was buried where water couldn't get to it and carry it out, because a lot of times you have textile products, they have a surface tension on them. I don't know whether you've ever experienced a mattress fire or not, but a mattress fire with cotton, very hard to extinguish. And you got to have something in that will penetrate or break that surface tension on that fiber to get into it. As you noticed earlier there, I showed you a bunch of pictures of bales of materials that were sitting in the driveway there from board. That would have been kind of typical pretty much all the way through the complex, except for Kenyon. I don't think Kenyon processed any raw fiber. They had fabrics that was produced at one of their complexes and then sent in to be processed or finished. And so when you get stuff compacted like that, it's really hard to just go in there and make a single shot and get it out. You have to work at it. And I don't know, it would be amazing to know if you had all the hoses connected to all the fire hydrants and sat down and calculate how many million gallons of water was put on that fire. I'm sure there were several. It was a lot of water. You know, one thing that really positive came out of it, Rossville had 2 small bays for a fire department, and they went in between the existing library and the city hall, and they built a new large fire hall, and immediately started looking for, we couldn't afford new equipment, but they got some good used equipment in. And we were under Shoemate's direction, Ron Shoemate's direction, they were able to get a 65-foot aerial truck. So we made some tremendous strides there in a short period of time to help alleviate another situation like that. So, you know, I'm proud of the city, proud that they were able to do that. I think, of course, training improved. We put in lockers. When that fire occurred, you ran in and grabbed a coat or boots off the wall. I alluded to the blisters on feet earlier. You grabbed whatever was there, and I think at that time we only had like 7 or 8 bunker coats and what they call day boots, a rubber boot that come up near your hips. And since then, those things have been outlawed because you get hot enough, those things will melt and you can have serious burns from them. And now, with the rules and new rules and regulations, even volunteers have to be properly equipped. And of course, that's evolved over several years. That didn't occur just right after that fire. But changes did start occurring. Additional breathing apparatus was brought in, all that sort of thing. So there were some positives to it that I think came out of it.
I didn't see any negative response. When I say negative, because those people was the type of people that didn't mind working everything they ever accomplished. And back in the 60s, our community was a proud community. And you asked for volunteers, you got volunteers. It's something that our community can be proud of, because we've been a proud community all this time, and it was devastating to us, but we fought back just like we always have, and it really showed me how proud a community can come together and how easy they can come together and work together.
They put me, I stayed at the Happy Valley Farm in Red Gilbreth, and let's see, Richard Lingelfeld for about 3 days out there guarding them big truck that we took all the yarn, put them in it, took it out there, and then we thought we'd be out of work, but we wasn't. They put us over there in a spinning ring spin, I believe it was. We'd working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day.
It's human nature to say, well, how could this happen to us, or how could this happen again, or how could this happen this quick? There's an old saying for people that went to Rossville High School that said, be Rossville. And Rossville people are resilient. And I think after the initial shock and the fact that, especially Borg, their insurance company paid to get the workers in to get the place cleaned up and going again. And the fact that it sounds kind of bad, but it actually created additional jobs, not necessarily for those that were employed in the parts that burned all the way down, but in construction and all that to get it cleaned out. And then, of course, the folks, as it was rebuilt, the same people basically went back in there. So they might have had some lapse in time, but I think a lot of them were brought in to help kind of clean up and restore and things like that. But it was amazing to me that they got it all back and running as fast as they did.